Good afternoon. My name is Derek Power. I'm a realtor with Exit Realty Success. It is my pleasure today to talk to you about something that's actually very dear to my heart, and that is relationships. You've probably heard already, in the real estate world, we're always using this term SOI. SOI stands for Sphere of Influence. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. We're going to talk about your sphere of influence, but more importantly, we're going to talk about how you can nurture those relationships to create opportunity to make money down the road. So let's go. First of all, I like to laugh. I don't know about you, but let's start off with a little bit of fun here. I love this comic. It says, "I'm wealthy beyond my wildest dreams. Unfortunately, my dreams were never very wild." I encourage you to dare to dream. When it comes to real estate, the sky is the limit. Let's not hold back on those dreams. You can have and get anything you want, but more importantly, that will happen as you help other people accomplish and get what they want. And that's really what today's training is all about. In life, the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it. So as we talk about your sphere of influence, what is a sphere of influence? Some of you may be listening to this training and saying, "I've never heard that term SOI. I don't know what an SOI is." Your sphere of influence is going to be a blend of personal and professional contacts built from a variety of resources. Now, these are individuals that you regularly interact with. Think about friends and family. They probably come first, and they're going to make up probably the largest part of your sphere of influence. Other individuals that will contribute towards that group would be coworkers. My daughter plays soccer, so all those other parents sitting on the side of that soccer field, many of them are in my sphere of influence. It could be someone that you say you go to the same restaurant all the time, someone that you're seeing on a regular basis. Those are the type of individuals that you can add to that group, add to that sphere of influence. The idea is that they're individuals that you're regularly going to interact with in a meaningful way. It allows you an opportunity to establish credibility, to create conversation and interaction that will eventually lead to action. One very important thing to keep in mind, with your sphere of influence, it's not about quantity. That's not what's most important. Do not try to build this group of thousands and thousands of people. What really matters with the sphere of influence is quality. It's the quality of those relationships. So quality over quantity every time. It's important that you're always taking temperature, that you're gauging where you are with your relationship with these individuals. If the only time that your sphere of influence is hearing from you is when you're asking for something, how do you think they would score that relationship? That's why I like to use that term nurture. It's all about nurturing. Nurturing over marketing. You cannot withdraw if you haven't previously been making deposits. And just reaching out to somebody and asking them for an opportunity for business, or if they know someone who's going to move or someone who wants to sell, well, those aren't deposits. Those are withdrawals. So every interaction should be deposit and service focused. I like to think of it this way. Every interaction that I have with a person should be an interaction where I'm adding value, where I'm in some way serving them, serving their family. I want to be a resource. I want to be someone who helps them to reach and accomplish their goals. To accomplish all that, it's critical that we know our sphere of influence, that we know what's important to them, that we know what they want to accomplish, that we know what their challenges are. And through that kind of knowledge, we can then focus and cultivate our interactions to help them to accomplish what they want. I think everyone has heard that old phrase, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. Well, that's true, but it is incomplete. People do buy from people that they know, like, and trust, but they only buy from people that they know, like, trust, and remember. And you need to remember that. If they don't remember you, they probably know somebody else that they know, like, and trust, who may have been more in contact with them over the last several weeks and months than you have been. People also will always refer their family, they'll refer their friends to people that they know, like, and trust, and remember too. Don't forget that. Finally, don't be afraid to ask for the withdrawal. As you cultivate these relationships, as you work with these people, as you continue to become something more than just a realtor to them, as you become an actual friend and a confidant, someone that they can trust, really, really trust, then it's an appropriate time to start asking for those withdrawals. Two of my personal goals, and I like to share a little bit as we go through this training with you about me, but two of my personal goals are to, one, nurture a minimum of 5 relationships a week. That's important to me. And then two, to identify at least 5 new people pretty much every quarter that I can become better connected with, that I can grow a deeper and better relationship with. Success is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. I think I said that right. I wondered why there was such a bad smell in here. Now here's the thing, nurturing a sphere of influence, well, it's work, but it's also fun work. But it does require a commitment on your part. So as we go into these next couple slides, you're going to realize, wow, I've got to work at this. You do. Things may come to those who wait, but only those things left by those who hustle. I love this. I'll promise you, if you're not out there hustling, if you're not out there cultivating, nurturing, and building your relationships with your sphere of influence, somebody else is. Okay, so to effectively nurture your sphere of influence, it's going to be critical that you establish some systems and that you put into place some processes to help you to really connect with and nurture those relationships. Right off the bat, the most important thing you're going to want to do is start to collect data, collect information on these individuals who are in your sphere of influence. This would be as simple as things like phone numbers, well, names, phone numbers, addresses, email addresses, but there's additional information you're going to want as well. If you've already worked with them, were they a buyer, were they a seller? Are they another agent? Do they have a family? Do they have kids? Are they dog lovers? What's their birthdays, anniversaries? I mean, there's a lot of information. And I guess it's really going to come down to that long-term vision on your end, what information is going to be important to you, because you're going to use that information to reach out to them authentically and regularly to nurture those relationships. So I guess right off the bat, I'm going to say more information up front is better than too little information, because it's very, very difficult to go back and to try and add some of that information when you've got 150 or 250 people in your sphere of influence. So start collecting data right away. You're then going to want to organize that data. Now, I organize my data in 2 places. Now, everybody's going to tell you just do it in one. I don't. I do have an Excel spreadsheet where I keep everything, and that's my home for all of that data. But then I also utilize a system that we have available to us at Exit Realty called PromoShop. That's a fantastic system that will help you to not just organize that data, but you can actually take it from PromoShop and then start directing certain types of nurturing and marketing campaigns with it. There are other systems out there that are available to you, but make no mistake, you're going to need something. You can't keep this information on a 3x5 card or in a Rolodex and expect to be able to really properly nurture those relationships like you're going to want to. So categorize that information, and then every year I have found if you do not already have a marketing or a nurturing, that's a better term, a nurturing calendar in place, you're just shooting from the hip. So every year, typically around October, when I'm setting my goals for the coming year, I also put into place a calendar for how I'm going to reach out regularly and what I'm going to do to nurture these relationships. I like to make sure that as I think through that calendar that I'm keeping the information and the event, that I'm keeping it interesting, that it's interactive, that it's going to be informative. And also I want to make sure that it's really personal. And it needs to be genuine, it needs to be authentic to me. So I like to create what I'm sending out. I don't like to buy articles. I prefer to do my own research, like in my newsletter, and write my own articles. And we'll get to that when we talk about the newsletter. Again, remember, it's not about the numbers. It's always going to be about the quality of the interactions and the relationships that you're developing. Now, what does a sphere of influence look like? How you decide you want to organize your sphere of influence, that's entirely up to you. It is going to be really important that it's easily, that you can navigate it very easily, that you can work with it very easily. So I've always found that that's best done when you're sorting things by category. So I'm going to have in my sphere of influence, like on my Excel sheet, you're going to see a name, then you're going to see a phone number, then you're going to see an address, then you're going to see an email address. And then I start to categorize from there. I like to categorize how I know them. What's my relationship with them? Then we'll go deeper. If dates are important to you, birth dates, I have those there. If they purchased a home from me, I always have the birth date of their new home in there. I think you're getting the idea. It's going to be more about you because this is very personal to you and to your relationships, but categorize. Again, the benefit of having these categories is it's going to allow you to more easily target and market and nurture those relationships. Now, I believe that you should be interacting at least at a minimum of one time a month with the individuals in your sphere of influence. For me, there are individuals that I'm interacting with 18 to 24 times a year. But at minimum, I think once a month is important. For that reason, it's going to be really critical that you keep it fresh and you keep it refreshing. If your idea of nurturing those relationships is going to be an emailed newsletter every single month, well, guess what? After 3 months, that's going to get boring. It's going to become regular and they're going to start ignoring it. So if you really, really want to build and nurture those relationships, you're going to want to do something different on a regular basis, not the same thing over and over on a regular basis. Now, there are some things that you can repeat, but you're going to want to repeat those things at intervals. I hope that makes sense. Keep it authentic, keep it genuine, and most important, make it about them. An example, and we're going to talk more about my newsletter here in a minute, but in my newsletter, which is always a minimum of 4 pages, only 1 page has to do about the real estate market. The rest of that newsletter is going to have to do about them. Well, who are them? Well, they are people who own homes. Well, what is important to a homeowner? Well, as we go into spring, maybe planting a garden is important to them. As we start a new year, maybe they've set a New Year's resolution that they want to redesign a room. So maybe sharing the top 10 new design elements for 2020 is important to them, or whatever year we're in. But I think, again, you're getting the idea here. Again, always look for an opportunity to serve in every interaction. Now, examples of consistent contacts and interactions that you can have, they would include events. I love events. The best part about an event is they're there and you're there. You're with each other. There's no better time and place to nurture those relationships. Some of the events that I do, every year I do 4 events. Perhaps the most well-attended event is going to be my summer barbecue. I usually have several hundred people there. I've had 300-400 people come to that event. I also do other events. I guess perhaps my favorite is always the events with Santa towards Christmas, like a breakfast with Santa, or we've rented out a room at Hogle Zoo and we've done zoo lights and had Santa surprise everyone there. Those are fun events. Newsletters are big. You can also write handwritten notes, and I think that's probably one of the greatest deposits you can make with an individual in your sphere. People don't write handwritten notes anymore. Have you noticed that you get lots of texts, you get lots of messages on Facebook, you get lots of emails, but how many times do you go out to your mailbox and there's a letter that's been handwritten and hand stamped that's waiting with your name on it? That's pretty exciting for people. Blogs, you can do things electronically, written or video. Postcards, if you're going on a trip, what a great time to reach out to your sphere of influence. Let them know that you're thinking of them. Send them a postcard from Rome. They'll love it. Important dates are really, really big. Remembering birthdays, remembering anniversaries, those sorts of things, that's a huge deposit for people. And it goes on. Now, for me, I'm going to share a little bit about what I've done with my sphere of influence, and perhaps this will help you as you decide how you want to create yours. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to tell you, you don't want to copy me. You want to do what's right for you. Now, if you just can't come up with anything and you decide, well, I'm just going to go with what Derek's doing for now, and then I'll adapt it over time, that's fine. Use it, keep what works and discard the rest. I think that's great, but I'm only sharing this with you so that you know kind of what a mature sphere of influence looks like. I will tell you, 9-10 years ago when I started doing this, what I did looked very different than what it looks now. So I've done what I just described. I started an approach to how I was going to market and nurture those relationships. And then over time, I've adapted and I've changed. So my sphere of influence, it's broken up into 3 different groups. I have an A group, a B group, and a C group. And this is going to sound real simple because it is. But my A group, those are my cheerleaders. In my A group, I have about 30 individuals. My goal when I first started getting into real estate and really establishing my spheres, I wanted 12 in my A group, but it's actually grown. It's been fantastic. But these 30 individuals, they're my cheerleaders. These are people who, if they need to buy or sell a home, they're going to call me every time. This year or 10 or 20 years from now, they're going to call me. Our relationships are that strong. They're also individuals who, if let's say one of their family or one of their friends mentions that they want or are considering doing something in real estate, or heck, if they were just at a restaurant and someone 5 tables over says, yeah, I'm thinking of buying a house, they're the kind of individual who would get up, talk to that person and say, I've got your realtor. Now, you think I'm being funny, but I'm not. I'm being serious. I've received those kind of introductions, or if you want to call it referrals, I prefer introduction, but I've received those kind of introductions from my A group and my sphere of influence. So obviously, these are people that I'm going to spend a lot of time with. These are people that go beyond that 1 interaction a month, and in many cases can be 2, 3, or even more interactions on a monthly basis. My B group, they're unlikely to refer me, but they're going to use me again. And I think we're all going to have people like that. They loved you, they had the most incredible experience. If they're going to buy, if they're going to sell, they're going to call you. But it is outside their comfort zone and it's not in their nature to make introductions. And that's okay. I don't want to turn them into somebody they're not. And my relationship with them isn't about that. My relationship with them is about our relationship. So it's great knowing that they had an experience with me where they're going to want to use me again, and I'm going to want to continue to interact with them, and we don't care whether they introduce us to a friend or family member. The C group, well, I haven't figured them out yet, and we're all going to have people like that in our sphere of influence, in our database. My goal over the next year as I interact with them on a monthly basis is going to be to try to figure them out and to give them an opportunity to figure out, well, who's Derek? I have had individuals who were in that C group who are now at the very top of my A group. It just took a little while. And I've had individuals who were in that C group who aren't in any group because it turned out that it just didn't fit. Remember, go back to quality over quantity. That C group, it's always being filtered. We're either moving them into the A and the B or we're moving them out. And there's nothing wrong with that, and don't feel bad about it. Great people, you're a great person, there just wasn't a fit in the sphere of influence. I do have subcategories within each of those groups, and you will too. You'll want, and it goes all the way back to that categorizing at the beginning. You're gonna want to be able to specialize how you reach out and contact and nurture those relationships, regardless of which group that they're in. Now, as we continue to talk about my sphere of influence, let's talk about how I actually nurture those relationships. What are we doing? How are we spending time together? Every quarter I'm going to have a quarterly event. Let's talk about what some of those look like. Well, typically I like to do the quarterly event at the end of the quarter because my newsletter, which we're going to talk about next, I do that at the very beginning of the quarter. And I don't really want both of those things to fall into the same month. So some of my quarterly events, I already talked to you a little bit about the barbecue. I talked to you a little bit about the breakfast with Santa. Those are kind of bigger events. They definitely involve a bit of planning. The beauty of those events, however, is you're in a space where you have that opportunity to really interact with people over an extended period of time. Another example of a great event, and a lot of realtors do this, is a movie event. I've done opening night for the last 3 or 4 Star Wars movies. And those are great. But unfortunately, the only interaction is when they're getting the tickets and the gift cards from you right before the movie and when they're giving you a high five on the way out. So you don't really get that opportunity to nurture the relationship beyond just inviting them to the event. I love events that are oriented around their home. Having an interior designer come here into the office and take space in the back room and inviting people to come and actually listen to a professional about how an individual can work with the items they already have in their home to create an entire space that feels unique and different to what they already have. With all of your events, you're going to have the opportunity to interact or to touch your sphere of influence a minimum of 4 times. Let me explain. You're going to send them an invitation. So my invitations are all mailed out. I don't email invitations. I don't text invitations. They're mailed out. They come in a hand-addressed and stamped envelope inviting them to the event. I ask them to RSVP. I leave my phone number. A lot of people do text me back. That's fine. And I'll text in return, but they get that invitation. Then I send a reminder to those people who haven't RSVP'd a week before the event, inviting them to come again. So for some people, that's their second touch from me regarding this event. We then have the event itself. There's number 2 for some and number 3 for others. And then after the event, I'm going to send a thank you card to every single person who came. And in that thank you card, I'm going to reference something that we talked about so that they felt heard and so that they felt remembered and so that they feel appreciated. And then for those people who didn't make it, I'm going to send another card. Sorry you didn't make it. I sure miss you. I sure love you. I hope you can make it to the next event. See how that works? 3 or 4 touches with that one event in 1 month. Okay, let's talk about newsletters. This is one of my favorites. Now, all of you are probably getting all sorts of newsletters in your email, I mean. Is that correct? I know I am. It seems like every day I'm getting some sort of an info piece in my inbox. That's awesome. The problem is when I'm in my Gmail account, I'm busy. And so I usually will see that, I might open it, I'll usually push it to the side, and then almost always I never get back to it. So I choose not to do electronic newsletters. I choose to mail mine. So all of my newsletters come in an envelope that's full-sized. Now normally you're going to have stamps up here, my return address and their name here. Again, it's always handwritten. I told you, marketing your sphere of influence is a little bit of work. And then when they open it, they get a newsletter. My newsletters are always a minimum of 4 pages, so that would be 4 pages, and in some cases, they're 8 pages. I like to do my first newsletter of every year as a little bit of a thicker newsletter. What I love about mailing out my newsletter is that first of all, people aren't getting stuff like this in the mail very often, at least not nowadays. They used to, but then everybody went to the internet. So now this is unique. I know for me, and I believe this is the case for most people, they always bring their mail into the house and it usually goes in the kitchen where they open it. Now, they may open this and they may not read it, but they almost never throw it away. It's usually set down on the counter, at which point they walk past it every day, 5, 6, 10, I don't know, how many times do you go into the kitchen? 20 times for 2 weeks, and then they throw it away. So every time they walk past it, every time they look at it, once a quarter, the first week of the first month of every quarter, they're getting all of these subconscious impressions. Derek Power, Realtor, Derek Power, Realtor, Derek Power, Realtor, over and over and over. Now, you might be thinking, you're full of crap. I am not. So I had an open house. This is a fun story. I had an open house in an area, and it was about a street and a half away from a home that I had sold probably 3 years earlier. On the home that I had sold 3 years earlier, I had represented a buyer. And I'd stayed in touch with them, and they came to my very first event after they purchased, but they hadn't come to any events since then. We had had conversations over the phone, but that was really kind of the extent of it. They were in my B group. I decided before the open house that I was just going to drop in and say hi. And when they opened the door, oh my gosh, she practically threw herself into my arms. She grabbed me by the hands. She pulled me into the kitchen. They were having breakfast. It was a Saturday morning, and it was a great reunion. And as I was standing there and talking to them, I looked over at her counter and I saw my newsletter, and I pointed and I said, "Oh my gosh, Sandy, that's my newsletter." And she goes, "Oh, no, 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 no." And she stood up and she walked over there and she came back and she had a dozen newsletters. She had never thrown a single one away. They were all sitting on her counter in a very organized kitchen, all in a stack. So it does work. So that's one of the things that works for me. Holidays, send them a note. I am a big proponent of sending every single person in my sphere of influence a handwritten Happy Holidays card. And that means I start writing them in October because my group is large enough, and because I want to take enough time that as I write them that they're meaningful and that my handwriting doesn't look like crap, that I have to start a little bit earlier, but send them a card. Something that I have done from day one with my sphere of influence as well is if an individual has purchased or sold a home from me, I send them a Christmas ornament every Christmas. And I'm going to send it to them for the rest of my life. Even if I'm not practicing real estate, they will get a Christmas ornament from me at Christmas. Every one of those has something to do with a house. Some years I'll send a key. Other years I'll send a little house. So they all have something to do with what I do. But it's a lot of fun. I've had people who have received 10 ornaments from me now. And I'll tell you, after those, and these I do mail out, after these get mailed out, I start to get bombarded with texts with photographs. And I will get photographs of trees and little messages, 5 ornaments from you, can't wait for number 6. People really appreciate that. They appreciate that they're remembered. They appreciate that they're loved and that they're special to me. I talked about postcards. We don't need to go into that in depth. But one thing that I'm going to talk about in a little bit more depth is the handwritten note. I think that this, if you do one thing, this will make the biggest difference in your business over anything else, at least as in regards to staying in touch and nurturing relationships. And that is just taking time to write a handwritten note. Every single weekday, Monday through Friday, the very first thing I do when I get to the office is I sit down and I write 2 handwritten notes. It used to be 1 because my sphere of influence was smaller. But as it's grown, I've realized if I don't do more than 1 a day, I'm not gonna send everybody in my sphere at least 1 handwritten note. So now it's 2. I've had other realtors reach out to me and say, "Well, what do you write about?" Well, I write about them. How often do people pop into your heads? They pop into mine all the time. And it's usually not just because they pop there, but it's because I've seen something or something's happened that's reminded me of that individual. And there's nothing wrong with just picking up a list of names and looking through it. And as you read through it, maybe one of those names really comes to the front and really impacts you. Write to them. I try to keep it somewhat short. It's usually no more than about 10 sentences. And then I definitely get it in the mail that day. So with my A group, and I will recommend that you do this with your cheerleaders as well, I like to go do something with them at least every quarter. And in some cases, it's every month. Some of those things will include just going out to lunch or grabbing a cup of coffee or a Coke or whatever. Some of the people I go climbing with or I go trail running with. I try to do what they enjoy doing. I try to get into their world. And in those moments, it's all about them. This is not an opportunity for me to talk about me. It's an opportunity for me to catch up with what's going on in their world. Keep it that way. You want to focus on always growing your sphere of influence. I encourage everybody who comes to one of my events to bring friends and family. I've had people turn my annual summer barbecue into a family reunion because I always have a professional photographer there, and they knew that. And so they brought 30 plus people to one, and I was happy to send them family reunion pictures. As you invite them to more and more of your events, they're going to invite you to theirs. Go. Do not miss that. That is a huge deposit on their side with you, and it is the biggest example of growing trust that you can find. Home warming and seller parties when someone's listing, those are big as well. I've got a whole other training on those, and you're welcome to reach out to me and we can talk about it one-on-one as well if that's something you're interested in. In the end, be creative and make it about quality over quantity. When you receive an introduction, when you receive a referral, the very first thing you should do is say thank you. Say thank you. Don't just do it in a text. Call them, and even if you call them, send them a handwritten note. Send them a thank you. Make it sincere. Make sure that you're heartfelt. I think it's really important if somebody's trusting you with a family member or a friend that you are showing consideration by being frequently in contact with them and letting them know how things are going. If you're not doing it, their friend or family member is. You want to make sure that they're hearing from you first, whether it's a bad thing, and more importantly, when it's a good thing. Make sure they're hearing from you. Show gratitude. Now, I don't think anybody has ever introduced me to somebody else because they're looking for some sort of a gift card in return. It just doesn't work that way. They're introducing their friends and family to me because they want those individuals to have a great experience, and they know how important homeownership is, whether you're buying or selling, and they want them to get exceptional service. That's the first gift that you can give to that individual who has referred someone to you, is take care of that person. But if you are going to give them a gift, and I don't discourage that, I think it's great and I do that, make it about them. If there's an opportunity as well to reciprocate, by all means, please do. In the end, I hope that you've learned something here. A lot of you probably already know a lot of this, and there's a lot of people that train on this in our industry. That's because it's super important. But I hope that there were a couple gold nuggets here that might make a difference for you in your world. Please feel very welcome to reach out to me anytime. You can call me. That would be my preference. I like to talk to people. I guess I'm old-fashioned that way. You can text me, you can email me, you can stop by the office. That would be my #1 preference. I'd love to sit down with you. But in closing, I just want to share a couple thoughts. Make sure that as you nurture these relationships, that focus is on incredible and lasting relationships. That's what it's all about. Make sure that you're anchored in purpose, that you're anchored in contribution. We serve to sell. That's our role. Be a serviceman. Be a servicewoman. Don't be a salesman. Don't be a saleswoman. You'll go further in not just real estate, but in any aspect of life by serving first. Dollars will always follow value. And if I can leave you with one of my favorite quotes, let me read it for you. It says, "It is one of the beautiful compensations of this life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself." And that's Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thank you. I wish you the most amazing success in real estate. And just remember one thing. What is success? Well, it's not making a sale. Success is serving others, whether it ends with a sale or not.